You just lost $40. Not dropped, not misplaced, lost. Maybe you checked your bank account and it was just gone, a charge you don't recognize, a subscription you forgot to cancel. And now there's this feeling in your chest, not dramatic, not devastating, just a heaviness that wasn't there 30 seconds ago. Now think about the last time you found $40. Maybe a friend paid you back for something you forgot about. Maybe you reached into an old jacket pocket and there it was, a little rush, a small smile, a good 30 seconds. But here's the thing that should bother you. The $40 is the same. The amount is identical. The math is symmetrical, but the feeling is not even close. Losing that money hit you roughly twice as hard as finding it would have made you feel good. Not slightly harder, not a little more annoying, twice. Your brain is running a rigged scale and you have almost certainly never noticed. In 1979, two Israeli psychologists named Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky published a paper that would eventually win a Nobel Prize and quietly reshape economics, medicine, law, marketing, and the way we understand human decision-making. They called it prospect theory. And at the center of it was a discovery so simple it sounds almost stupid until you realize how deeply it controls your life. We feel losses more intensely than equivalent gains. Not because we're dramatic, not because we're pessimistic. Because the human brain evolved in an environment where losses were often irreversible. If you lost your food supply 50,000 years ago, you didn't eat. If you lost your shelter, you froze. If you lost your standing in the group, you could be abandoned, and abandonment meant death. Gains were nice. Losses were survival threats. Your brain learned to treat them differently, and it never unlearned that lesson. Kahneman and Tversky tested this with hundreds of experiments. In one version, they gave participants a simple choice. Option A, you receive a guaranteed $1,000. Option B, you flip a coin. Heads, you get $2,000. Tails, you get nothing. What did most people choose? The guaranteed $1,000. Even though the expected value of the coin flip was identical, $1,000 on average, most people didn't want to risk walking away with nothing. The pain of potentially losing the gamble outweighed the joy of potentially doubling their money. Then they flipped the framing. Same participants, different setup. Option A, you lose a guaranteed $1,000. Option B, you flip a coin. Heads, you lose $2,000. Tails, you lose nothing. Now what happened? Most people chose the coin flip. Suddenly they were willing to gamble, because the possibility of losing nothing was too tempting even though the expected loss was the same. When the choice was framed as a loss, people became risk-seeking. When it was framed as a gain, people became risk-averse. Same math. Opposite behavior every single time. This is loss aversion, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever held onto a stock that was clearly declining, telling yourself it would come back, refusing to sell because selling would mean admitting the loss was real? Of course you have. The investment world even has a name for it. The disposition effect. Investors hold losing stocks too long and sell winning stocks too soon, not because they're bad at math. Because realizing a loss feels like ripping off a bandage, while realizing a gain feels like a nice but not urgent bonus. Now think about something smaller, your closet. Right now, somewhere in your home, there are clothes you haven't worn in over a year, maybe 2 years. You know you should donate them, but something stops you. What if you need them later? What if you regret giving them away? That hesitation is loss aversion in action. The pain of potentially losing something you already have is greater than the pleasure of gaining the extra closet space or the good feeling of donating to someone who needs it. In the early 1990s, economists Jack Netch and Jack Kahneman, along with Thaler, ran a now-famous experiment using coffee mugs. They gave a group of students free mugs. Then they told those students they could sell the mugs if they wanted. Separately, they asked a different group of students how much they would pay to buy those same mugs. The results were staggering. Students who owned the mugs demanded roughly twice the price to sell them as students without mugs were willing to pay. Same mug, same campus, same afternoon. But once you owned it, your brain revalued it. It became yours, and losing yours felt worse than gaining someone else's identical mug would feel good. They called this the endowment effect. You value things more simply because you already have them. Ownership changes the way your brain calculates worth, and it doesn't just apply to mugs. It applies to your job. You might stay in a role that makes you miserable because leaving feels like losing stability, losing seniority, losing the identity you've built there, even though a new job might make you significantly happier. The known loss looms larger than the unknown gain. It applies to relationships. You might stay in a friendship or a partnership that drains you because the thought of losing the history, the shared memories, the comfort of having someone outweighs the possibility of finding something healthier. Your brain whispers, "What if nothing better comes?" And that whisper born from loss aversion keeps you in place. It applies to arguments. Have you ever continued fighting a point long past the moment you realized you were wrong? Not because you're stubborn, though that's what it looks like, but because conceding feels like losing territory, losing face, losing the narrative, even when you know, somewhere underneath, that letting go would bring peace. The loss of being wrong feels heavier than the gain of being done. So why is your brain so tilted? Neuroscience gives us a window into the mechanism. When researchers at Columbia University used functional MRI to scan the brains of people making financial decisions, they found that gains and losses activate different neural pathways. Gains light up the ventral striatum, a region associated with reward processing. But losses light up the amygdala and the insula, regions connected to threat detection, pain, and disgust. Read that again. Your brain processes financial losses in the same regions that process physical danger. Not adjacent regions, the same ones. When you lose money, when you lose an opportunity, when you lose something you thought you had, your brain reacts as though something in the world just became threatening. Your palms might sweat slightly, your chest might tighten, you might feel a flash of nausea. Those aren't metaphors, those are your threat detection circuits firing. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Loss aversion doesn't just affect money, it shapes your entire perception of fairness. In the 1980s, economist Richard Thaler studied how people react to price changes. He found that people accept price increases on things they already buy more easily than they accept losing a feature or benefit they're used to. Companies understood this before most psychologists did. They don't take away a service, they restructure it. They don't raise the price on your screen, they shrink the product. Because framing a loss as a quiet reduction triggers less aversion than an open removal. Your brain's loss aversion is being exploited every single day by algorithms that show you what you might miss rather than what you might gain, by limited time offers that frame the deal as something slipping away rather than something arriving, by notification badges that make you feel like unread messages are lost opportunities, by streaming platforms that tell you a show is leaving soon as if its departure is a personal loss rather than a licensing rotation. You are swimming in loss aversion, and most of the water is invisible. But here's what Kahneman himself spent decades trying to teach people. Awareness helps, not completely. You cannot think your way out of the asymmetry. Your amygdala will still fire when you check your portfolio during a downturn. Your insula will still activate when someone cuts in front of you in line. The emotional tilt is baked in. But knowing it exists gives you a pause, a half-second of space between the feeling and the reaction. That half-second is enough to ask a single question. Am I avoiding a real risk, or am I just avoiding the feeling of loss? Because sometimes those are very different things. The $40 you lost this morning was real. The heaviness you felt was real. But if you'd found $40 in that same hour, the joy would have been briefer, lighter, and easier to forget. Your brain would have moved on in minutes. The loss, though, you'll remember it tomorrow. That asymmetry isn't a flaw. It kept your ancestors alive. But in a world where most losses are reversible, where stocks recover, where jobs can be replaced, where relationships can be rebuilt, that ancient alarm system fires too often and too loudly. You are not irrational for feeling losses more than gains. You are ancient. You are carrying a brain built for a world of scarcity and permanence, running inside a world of abundance and information. And the least you can do is notice when the alarm goes off. Ask yourself, is this a real threat, or is this just my brain doing what it has always done, protecting me from a loss that doesn't actually exist?